authorities to engage and tune into local conversations and to get a sense of the skills, the interests, the concerns of local communities. Once again, and we'll say over and over again, how we will be meeting these targets locally, nationally, internationally, is by engaging with communities. And to the extent that we can do that with our own local authorities, so much the better. And we're very well represented here today with people from our local authority and local elected officials too. So with that, I will hand you back to Jess, who's going to take to our new stage and invite some participants from the local authority. Thank you very much.
So we've come a wee bit more into the body of the Kirk. There's a few seats because we're saving them for some of the children who are joining us later. So feel free to come forwards if you'd like to be more in the body of the Kirk yourselves. But can I welcome up to our next chat space, leader of our council, Councillor Grant Laing, Councillor Richard Waters, who's the convener of our Sustainability and Climate Committee, and certainly not least, Susan Norrie, who's a great champion of climate cafes, and they're going to come and share their stories with me just now. Thank you. Okay, now we're all sorted, and hopefully I've been worrying Alistair that might disappear down the back here. So I've not to move my chair. I hope you're safe there, Grant.
Don't want another election.
We certainly don't want.
Move your chair.
I know.
Okay. Right. So the reason we've we've got a broadcaster in the room. Thank you, Fiona. That's us all sorted. The reason we've convened this panel, and I'm really grateful, these are busy people, I'm really grateful for you giving your time to this, is because we've got a really good story to share from where all the original climate cafes have emerged in Perth and Kinross. There's been a really positive collaboration with the local government, the local authority in this area from very early on, and we're going to talk about that and just hear it from the local authority perspective, from the elected members and those who are running the council, and also from Susie and her colleague Irene, who's been the champion of Climate Cafe as well, seeing early on the opportunities to collaborate and to connect and hear from local communities themselves. So we've got at the back for the end of this session, we've captured some of the learning that we've had in this area, and just really keen to share that with the coordinators who are here today and all of our friends and supporters who are here today, but also to share that more widely. This week I've been hearing that the council in Chelmsford have been inspired by this kind of connection. So this is not the first time I've heard this, which is why we thought we'd create space for this session. So I wonder if you want to take a moment just to introduce yourselves and a bit about your role so people understand the perspectives that you bring to the observations on Climate Cafe.
So I'm Grant Laing. I'm fortunate enough to be the leader of Perth and Kinross Council, and since we became a minority administration but supported by other groups on certain issues. One of the first things I think we did within the first 3 months of becoming the administration was to form a Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, which I think was the first one in Scotland, if not the UK. And it's such an important subject that it's not party political, and I think we've got the convener of Climate Change and Sustainability Committee here, Richard, but we've also got the vice convener, who's a different political party but very involved and works hard along with other elected members. So it's a good, I think it's a good example of how we can achieve more when we put politics to the side and certain things and work together, and this is something that affects everybody. I think Jess is to blame for a lot of any of my knowledge about climate change and that, because my daughter is very friendly with Ruby Flatley, who's Jess's protege, and I think a lot of the learning for people of my age comes from younger people and put a focus on it. So that's just one of the things we've done, and we'll talk about other smaller things that we do as well to try and lead and move forward. And I believe Dundee are moving towards having a climate change and sustainability committee as well. I'll speak to John Alexander this week, and don't mind him pinching our ideas, and we'll work together collaboratively across councils as well. But that's how we've got to the stage that we're here today.
Thanks, Grant. I should acknowledge that Ruby is one of our directors, having been involved with Climate Cafe since she was 11, as you saw, with some of her bunting project, and has led all sorts of programmes and been trained by Al Gore, but is now one of our directors of the Climate Cafe Kick. I learn more from her than she does from me, I can assure you. Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard Waters, convener of Climate Change and Sustainability, and as Grant has already pointed out, I think as an elected member, even before we had the opportunity to potentially set up a climate change type committee, I moved the climate change motion before council, realising, quite a number of years ago now, 5 years ago now, that the importance that, from our commitment and our obligations politically is to support the actions we need to take from climate change throughout what we deliver as a council, and putting a motion forward was the first step. As soon as we got into administration as a minority, we've worked with, Grant mentioned Liz, worked with Liz and other people, and we've managed to get a climate change and sustainability committee set up. And we are trying to make a real difference within the policies that are coming through as a council, and how they're making a difference from dealing and addressing some of the challenges we face going ahead. I am a local councillor for Kinross Shire, and our local climate cafe there has been absolutely amazing. I'm not sure what the numbers are like, but they're huge. The turnout is sometimes there are 50, 60 people turning up to some of the events that are put on there, and it just shows you the amount of local commitment that you're getting, that level of support coming to the Climate Cafe, and the difference it's making within the communities is huge. And they're always throwing ideas out, and they're asking, say, well, can you help with this? How can we do this? How can we kind of, help her build the sustainability? Because we have Loch Leven in the area with a lot of environmental issues around that. And Climate Cafe is at the fore dealing with these type of issues that we face.
Thank you. It's just a few years ago when we started our work together, there was no Climate Cafe in Kinross Shire, and now it's really buzzing, thanks to the coordinator, Gosha, who sadly can't be here today. Who can't be here today because you've got another big thing happening tomorrow, which is the launch of the Repair Cafe, and that's going to be a big event in Kinross tomorrow. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, no credit to Gosha too. Susie.
Yeah, I'm Susie Norrie. I'm one of the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Officers at Perth and Kinross Council. My main role is to focus on the education and engagement section of the Climate Action Plan. And we've been working really closely with the cafes over the past couple of years. It's been a great opportunity actually, and we've been collaborating on quite a lot, so hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that today. But yeah, and from that it's inspired us as a couple of our officers have got together and we've formed our own staff climate cafes. So yeah, it's been exciting times over the past couple of years, and we look forward to sort of expanding on the cafe.
So it's first climate cafe within a local authority. Yeah, which is, so how many staff are able to come along to the climate cafe if they choose?
So at the moment we've got almost 60 members, but we're over 5,000 strong, so we could really expand on this cafe, and that's what we're hoping to do. So
great.
Yeah, try and build some momentum behind it and see if we can try and get more members on board.
And you've already taken actions as a collective as well.
Lots of actions, yeah.
Do you want to tell us about some of the actions you've taken?
Yeah, I highlighted some of them today because I thought, it'd be nice to go over them and get an opportunity. But obviously we talked about, sort of the chat sessions. We've done that where we've sat down and talked about climate, what we're doing as a council, the climate action plan and strategy. How do people feel it's should be considered within their own role or within their department, how can improvements be made, how can we support them, that type of thing. So really informal, nice environment where people just have a cuppa and a chat really. And then we've also had guest speakers come in, so you know, Nathan was talking about that sort of thematic type of event, and we've had activities like that where it's maybe focused on things like cost of living. So we've had the heat project come along and do talks for staff where they can actually think about where it could be introduced within their own lives, or how it could be introduced within their role to support people within the community. And often enough, it's sometimes the most vulnerable people in the community as well. Yeah, we've had sort of speakers from Fair Trade Fortnight, we've done sustainable Christmas events together, workshops, Food Waste Action Week, awareness raising, that type of thing. One of the things that we were meant to be doing last week but got cancelled was a paddle and pick, because we've done quite a few litter picks, which are very popular. But just for the weather, we've postponed it. So that's to support the Spring Clean Scotland. So we've worked closely with Keep Scotland Beautiful with that. And they're really sort of supportive of the climate.cafe idea. So yeah, Sustrand's been working closely with them as well. E-bike trials, they're going to do litter picks with us, but with the cargo bikes, that type of thing. So even though they're you know, it's quite active activities that we're doing, it's also an opportunity to network with people, have a chat, you know, and staff are using their own time as well. They're volunteering their own time to get involved.
From across departments, so it's bringing people from across the whole
council.
Organisation.
Anyone is welcome.
Great,
Yeah.
great. And a bit of tree planting and all the rest.
Yeah.
Great. So one of the first actions, and I know Irene had shared some thoughts with us about one of the first things that as we saw the climate cafes emerging across the region, the climate change strategy was also being pulled together around that time, and there was a collaboration with the climate cafes to hear the local input into that strategy. I don't know, Grant, if you want to comment on how that worked. And yeah.
Well, I'll let Richard or that, who are more close to it than I am. I've remiss of me to say that this is my ward. I'm right in the centre of it. Obviously the most beautiful ward in Perth and Kinross. So sorry from the people from Blairgowrie and Highland and that, but I keep reiterating it because I actually believe it. So I think as elected members, and a lot of the work obviously that goes on is done by our officers, and we've got wonderful officers who are committed. It's not a 9-to-5 job for them, it's part of the ethos of the way they want to live, and that makes it more real and everything coming forward. So I think with them being based in climate change cafe and listening to people, etc., it really helps. What we can do as elected members is, I was asked to, and was quite happy to sign up with Richard, and I think all elected members, I'm sure Liz has done it, and that's the first thing we did was do our carbon literacy training and get accredited for that. And at that time that was outsourced, and now it's done in-house, so any member of the officer that works for the council, elected member, can go through carbon literacy. Small things were introduced through council. The motion was that would be no fly within the UK mainland, so we use public transport officers and elected members, and it may sound a small thing, but it's making a statement. I'm trying to push Dundee and John Alexander, which may be more difficult for him having an airport in Dundee, but I think it just sends a good message if we do that. Personally, I decided last year that I would use public transport every day I went to the council, and I've managed to do that for 13 months now, and it's a 40-minute drive, and you either get a chance to read a book or more likely you get talked about music lessons, potholes, bins or something like that, but it's a good way to meet people. We have brought in the 4 Saturdays in December are free bus days, so they're free to everybody, and using the bus even on these days just to go around, people were going that wouldn't normally go from, say, Perth to Blairgowrie, were actually using the bus, and they said, well, I haven't been on the bus for 20-30 years, but because it's free we can go up and have a drink or a meal and buy some Christmas shopping someplace we wouldn't normally go. And it was such a success. I think there was 55,000 people or something used that over 4 weekends, used the bus that probably wouldn't use it. And that's not counting the people who, like myself, are just old enough to have a bus pass. Not 20 at the other end, but that's us not counting them as well. So it's a great uplift, and through Council, through the budget process, we've committed to making what we call sort of payday Saturday. So the first Saturday of the month will be free for bus transport for everybody across the local authority. So they'll be able to travel, take their kids to McCrosty Park or something in Crieff, and it'll not cost them anything to get there and get back. So it's just small things we can do like that I think can make a difference. And the most exasperating thing about being on a committee or in the council, and there's none of the elected members here that have ever said this because they all support it, is when it said, but we're only 0.01% of the problem, so what good is it for us to try and do anything? And that's the most frustrating thing that you can possibly hear by somebody that's elected. I don't think we're in touch with, as somebody said earlier this morning, 80% of the population. So we will keep listening to what people have to say. And Richard and Liz's committee, the reason to put that committee in was reports were never had a climate perspective to any report that came to council. So it would be an economic impact, or it would be an employability impact, but it never had a climate change impact. So that we now balance that against whether a project should go ahead or not. There's always the effect on climate change and carbon footprint that's taken in, and it's got to be a sort of a cost-benefit analysis. So that's something else that's come in, and we've moved the remits of the committee as well. A lot's come from enterprise and infrastructure, which was the overarching one, and we've sort of split that off, and I'm sure Richard will speak about mobility and everything. We've taken that big chunk of work, and it now sits under climate change and sustainability, which is, I think, a better place for it to sit.
Because that's always been one of the challenges with any governance, is having, you know, many of us will be aware that the climate and sustainability bit sometimes sits at the side, maybe in another department rather than at the heart of everything, so that restructuring can help. I'm just going to pick up on that information, apart from sitting on the bus, which we heartily recommend, obviously, but having that dialogue with the communities. I mean, that's been something which has been a feature of the relationship between the climate cafes and the collaboration with the council since early days, where as the climate cafes emerged across the region, there would be a session where officials, and not exclusively the climate officials, but it might be the climate action officials who would make these connections, but officials from transport or waste services or biodiversity or all sorts would come in and hear what was happening within these local conversations and what the opportunities were to get and what the ideas were to get behind, but also what the challenges and the hurdles might be that the council could help. As we know now, we're well familiar that the issues can be very hyper-local, but there can always be common themes as well. I think we've become aware of that. And I was going to just maybe kind of come back, Susie, just to talk a bit about the strategy and how that worked, and then maybe hear from our convener of the Sustainability and Climate Committee a bit more about, you know, how that information helps to inform the work of the committee as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, how we're talking about sort of being involved at early, you know, the early start to the sort of the climate action plan and strategy. We worked really closely with the climate cafes, and it was incredibly useful because at the interim report stage, essentially what we did was go out to the community and go over what the interim report, you know, cover the key objectives, and then there was an online consultation, which I'm sure some of you have seen. We've now got a dedicated consultation hub for climate change. So having that standalone dedicated page has been, you know, welcomed by the community. And then we, from the engagement with the climate cafes on the interim report stage, that essentially informed the climate action plan and strategy that we're now all working from. And Irini and I, before this, had a quick look at the numbers, you know, and how much engagement we had. We really did rely on the climate cafes and the community to spread the word. And we got a phenomenal amount of responses. You know, we compared it to other consultations. So, you know, we really want to thank everyone that was involved in that process, because without it, we wouldn't have had the response that we received, you know.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it actually, of course, it wasn't just the folk who would regularly attend the Climate Cafe. The Climate Cafe in each community was creating a space for everybody across all the networks to get involved, and just building on those local relationships, which are so much more trusted than sort of parachuting in and doing an event. We've been sharing a bit of that with Scottish Government recently, hoping that they will see the benefit of that kind of engagement at a local level as well, because it had such resounding results for you guys, and we've done so much.
And we want to continue that
it.
type of engagement where we're collaborating together to try and get more people on board to have their voices heard, really.
Into the conversation.
Yeah. And a little bit on the, you know, working with sort of the other people within the council as well, that's been useful too, you know, for both sides. We're lucky that we've got sort of 8 thematic climate change working groups within the council. I think there's about 70 plus members of staff that are involved in that, all, you know, specialising in different areas of the climate action plan. So if there are any questions from the community, they'll come to us, and we can then find the right person to support them in the community.
Just before we move on to the committee, I just wanted to acknowledge that in that dialogue about the climate change action plan and the strategy, the communities were valued as well. So where before you might have asked one person to undertake that, maybe a consultancy piece to undertake that engagement, in this case the budget that was aside for doing that piece of work was shared out across the communities as well, so that those climate cafes who did nurture the chat within their own space also got £800 to put towards whatever they wanted to put it towards. So, you know, it wasn't vast amounts of money, but actually it had some meaningful, you know, as I say about the poster template, that stuff can go a long way if it's helping you. You know, that's a pretty good biscuit fund, but I know other people got films and all sorts of things out of that as well. So that helps to keep the things moving, and it acknowledges and values people's time in their community as well, which is important.
That fund there was really to celebrate the collaboration that we'd had with the communities. Yeah.
Thank you, Susie. I wanted to pass over to our convener, the Climate and Sustainability Committee, Richard, and just, a bit more about how you, obviously you're saying about how you see the dialogue about climate moving in your community that you represent, but across the area, how does it inform the committee?
I think community engagement's absolutely key, and you know, we're, you know, when whether it's a climate cafe, biodiversity groups, in bloom groups, anything, it's absolutely essential. We do engage with communities to get the policies right. One of the papers that's going to be coming out soon is our mobility strategy, which is one of the, you know, from a climate perspective and a future perspective, looking at the next 15 years and how we envisage we travel around, which is given minus land use, we're 52% of our carbon footprint is through transport. So it's an absolutely essential bit, and that will be coming, the draft of that will be coming before the committee very soon. And followed on immediately from that it will go out to consultation. And it's absolutely essential that we get the community feedback on that, and that's where we, you know, I know Jess and has been done amazing work on the rural transport stuff, and you know, it's stuff like that will be able to fit in, you know, active travel, but basically how we can travel around in a more environmentally friendly way, and that's something that we will be progressing forward. I think having these community groups and being able to work with them as a council is essential in us delivering what we need to deliver. We all want to achieve the same things. As a council, with the financial constraints we have, it's exceptionally challenging as a council, but we're seeing a huge amount of innovation coming from community groups, whether it's climate cafes, you know, get parochial, Glenfarr Transport Group and Glenfarr, Kinross is amazing what they've done. They've seen bus numbers just skyrocket through the roof on people that are using buses instead of taking cars. You know, and there's, you know, some of the in bloom groups, the biodiversity villages, towns, and everything like that. And I think Perth and Kinross is a hub for that kind of community engagement, and it's certainly something as politicians, you know, Grant and myself, and Liz and Claire there as well. are keen to get that kind of feedback coming to us, so when we're making policy decisions, it is the ones that put the planet as a priority and not just the financial side.
Thank you. It is lovely to hear the Glenfarg community bus takes. There's no Climate Cafe in Glenfarg, not least because the Glenfarg community bus takes all the folk who want to go to the Climate Cafe to Kinross share, so they go to that one with it Scotia runs as well. Yeah.
Just shows that we should be giving communities the tools to do stuff that we can't do anymore financially, and I think people living in communities can make a better job of it than somebody that's working 9 to 5, you know, coming in to cut this or do whatever. So I think moving forward, and resilience groups have sprung up due to climate change, due to flooding basically, and I think as a council we're quite good at trying to give people the tools to do the job themselves. And the one down at Glenfarg, the example there is what will happen everywhere is if you've got 200 and some people using a bus a week, when it's a large company, Stagecoach has it, and then you give a bus or a group takes on a bus and you fund it as a community and it grows to 600 and some people using it a week, it's because the community feels it's their bus rather than they're giving money to what is now a German owned company. And I think if you give communities a chance to, they'll use the bus more if it's theirs. They'll use anything more if they feel part of it. And we have to make hard decisions. So this is my challenge back to people who support, you know, some of the things that we're doing as politicians. So go back to the no-mo or the lift in certain areas. As a local authority, we take, if people are going to complain, you'll get a lot of people complaining. If people support it, very few people come on and say, well, actually, this is a good idea for this, this, and this. So I feel that the challenge to people here and climate change cafes, when you see something like the flack we're taking because we decided to go to grey bins, which everybody was slaughtering us for, who needs another bin? If you look at the recycling rates since we brought the grey bin in, I don't know about everybody here's got a grey bin, but everybody in Perthshire should have, and that takes your cartons, it takes plastic bottles, it takes film, it takes a whole load of things that we never took before. And look at the usage, certainly mine, the grey bin is filled twice as quick as the green bin, which just goes to landfill. But nobody come out and said, well, this is a good idea at the time because you're increasing it. So challenge is if you can help us by sort of spreading not the doom and gloom, but dispersing a bit of the doom and gloom by saying, actually, this is a good idea, what you're doing. Actually, not cutting every part of the green space everywhere is a good idea. And can even get involved with helping to plug plants and do that. We'll give you these tools for you to help us to go for what we all want to achieve.
So I think the challenge is on us all. I mean, every day has been a bit of a learning day, but and we were talking this morning just about this is a pivotal moment where we really, you know, in terms of the science and in terms of absolutely, you know, critical moment in terms of the science and the direction. We did talk about creating that political space where you may have had 2 or 3 folk who just, you know, persistently oppose something. Our communities can be, you know, more likely saying this is what is required, and we're starting to hear that in a gentler, maybe murmuring way across our communities, across this area. But still, masses of work to do, not as we know from our news yesterday, which was really disappointing about the targets, but the action is what's really important here. So I wanted to, you know, we need to wrap up our chat right now, but it's nice to share some good news about collaboration and where things have been more effective. Obviously, we're seeing the climate cafes emerging across schools in Perth and Kinross, but not uniquely in Perth and Kinross. This is just one area, and we've got coordinators from across the area, and one of our coordinators is involved in a climate cafe in a primary in Glasgow, who's here today as well, which is fantastic. I just wondered if you had any other thoughts, just to close, Susie, about, you know, some of your highlights of what we've achieved together. We've got lots of work to do, as we all know, but a lot of that will be about systems change, not just local folk taking their own change.
Yeah, I think probably a highlight for me is that we've come together to collaborate at events, you know, and I hope that we could maybe do that more often. Earth Day market last year, I think, was a success, and without the climate cafes, you know, we wouldn't have had the support that we needed to sort of get everyone involved within the community. And this year we're running a summer market which has got a biodiversity theme to run in line with the Teesside Biodiversity Festival. So we've put invites out now to see if there's interest, and you know, we'd be more than happy to work with the climate cafes again on another event. So similar to last year, but with a slightly different theme, you know. So yeah, I think that worked very well. And in fact, the other thing from that as well, you know, at the end, we had the opportunity to actually run a climate cafe. You know, we held a market. We had a canny cycle with over 100 people coming for a cycle, a community-led cycle, and we'll be doing the same this year as well. And then market stalls with sustainable businesses, with community groups. So it really had just a nice atmosphere. And again, it was an opportunity for people to get to know one another. But then afterwards, we had that hour to sit down as a climate cafe, an informal space to have a chat. And one of the key things that came out of that was, you know, talking about the PK Climate Action Hub, which is bringing all the community groups together, you know.
Yeah, so that's maybe another opportunity for collaboration.
Yes.
And in this area. Thank you all for your time and sharing your insights into, you know, what the climate cafes have meant for you. There is, as I say, we'll have this on the website as well, but just a wee download about some of the benefits. I think we will keep building on this and learning from it as more opportunities to collaborate emerge. We're going to do a quick turnaround now, so there's an opportunity to get a comfort break if you would like. And then I thank you for mentioning it. One of the things which we have become aware of is that business has been really involved in the emergence of climate cafes as well. So I love the fact that you mentioned about the climate cafe at the end there, Susie, because it is that sharing of space. It's not like anybody owns that space, and where there is a climate cafe space within a community, it's that regular pop-up, and you can learn about, and maybe as Marie-Claire mentioned earlier, some of those other projects which are doing different things, maybe in biodiversity or whatever they're doing, active travel. People can think, okay, maybe that's my thing, and I might get involved in that because I've been inspired by the chat that I've had.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
and
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
be careful as you leave the stage. Thank you. That is now. Would you want to tell us a bit more about where the heat project is at, Martin? Thank you for joining us.
Where are we at?
Yeah, where it's come from, where it's at, and maybe some of your insights into how, it works with the climate cafes. That'd be amazing.
This will give me a chance to say thanks to a couple of people in the audience as well. So we were born out of the Blairgowrie and Rattray Climate Cafe at a time when I knew nothing about climate cafes. And the first I knew was that a job advert appeared for a project manager, and I applied for it in a moment of madness and became manager of the heat project. It had been Len and Kay from Blairgowrie with the rest of the climate cafe there had come up with the idea. Having decided it was a good idea, they realised that the climate cafe wasn't legally competent to take money and run it, but they managed to get the local development trust to take on the project with funding from the Scottish Government's Climate Challenge Fund. 2-year project, and I thought that'll do me nicely for 2 years, and here I am 7 years later. The project started very, very small, and it's still a small project, but it has grown significantly. As Nathan said earlier, that we now have a team of 3 people who go out and do energy advice, myself, Nathan, and Craig, who's actually busy giving energy advice even as we speak, along with Shannon, who does all the social media and marketing and communication stuff. It's over 3,000 homes that have had in-depth advice now in Perth and Kinross. We're getting on for 5% of all the households in Perth and Kinross. So it's Monia Mickle, Maxa Muckle. Lots and lots of small things gradually start to add up to something significant. Sadly, these days, my job is mainly trying to get money. I'm an environmental scientist with God knows how many years' experience, and Jess's dad was my mentor. And now I am involved in doing grant applications and reporting to funders. And that's where I want to say thank you, because I fell down on the job last year and we had a gap in funding. And Perth and Kinross Council came in with emergency funding, which kept us going until I managed to secure more long-term funding. That's another example of how Perth and Kinross really walks the walk, doesn't just talk the talk. And they gave us
Yeah. Not just the climate emergency, but the cost of living crisis and the ecological crisis. And Nathan, is this just transition genuinely happening in communities, that community leadership leading to support for local folk, households, businesses to shift?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of interest out there to do this kind of thing, and a lot of the time people maybe don't know like the first step to take, which has been a real strength for the HEAT project, to come in as a kind of impartial advisor, kind of local as well, and so kind of community focused, because that's where it kind of came from, as a trusted messenger to say what the kind of options are and point in the right direction. Bringing people together, I guess, as a community in the direction of a just transition.
There's something really precious in that, the locally informed local solutions, isn't there, that can then be enabled in that way. You just mentioned, Martin, about Perth and Kinross Council. I remember in the Climate Cafe in Dunkeld and Birnam that there were, at the very start, about half a dozen people who really wanted to take action on plastics, but at the time didn't feel that they had the capacity and maybe the expertise to get moving on that. And then somebody who was a master's student but grew up in this area wanted to come back and do a project on plastics, and then we had the plastic-free Perthshire project rolled out, and there was the straws and the single-use plastics from across the high street were gone within weeks, because it was through local networks and because of the leadership of business, and that people wanted to do what they could to contribute. So there seems to be something that's really resilient in that.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that as a HEAT project, it wasn't our day-to-day job, but we became a collection point for crisp packets for recycling, thanks to Kay sitting there. And of course that's now redundant, because with the new grey bins, which everybody moaned about, guess what? You can put your crisp packets in your grey bin. And that shows how you start. I mean, I was mentioning earlier about Schumacher, it's think local, think global, act local, and small is beautiful. But in fact, he learned that from the Scots, because we've been saying for years, monia mickle, max a muckle. And that's an example of it. These little things suddenly add up, and the council takes action, and suddenly, crisp packets, you can put them in your grey bin. And little changes add up to a big thing in the end. I wouldn't be in this business if I wasn't an optimist. There are enough reasons to be a pessimist at the moment, but you've got to be an optimist. You've got to believe you can make a difference with the little things that you can do.
There's another example across this region in food, I think, where you're seeing really strong collaboration with the leadership from communities supported by the local authority, but really with the local businesses as well. And I think we see that very strongly. And so now this community has 2 food chairs and a community fridge, and Jan, who's led that effort, is here with us. But these food share projects are emerging right across the area, and I know that some of the Climate Cafe folk have connected up to learn more about what they've done and to support local producers, but the businesses are contributing at the end of the day, whether it's their scones or any food that would have gone to waste before, those are going onto the food shares, and we're reducing, not only are we reducing food waste and methane emissions, which of course are more potent than carbon dioxide, but also cost, and we're promoting that sharing kind of culture as well. I don't know if, Nathan, maybe as your Climate Cafe coordinator hat on as well, you see a lot of that food stuff happening. A lot of that leadership has come from your Climate Cafe.
I think I don't know the entire history of the initiation in Blairgowrie, but it's a big part of the kind of community hub that we have in Blairgowrie now with Food Share. as the kind of Barry food store. It's also where we have a drop-in every week as well, so, and a few other kind of organisations for community support, that people can come there, make use of the food that would be going to waste that businesses are donating, and yeah, acting as a space again to hear about things and support people through various different means.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to get this insight from your perspective again. Thank you for that. We've just had, people maybe who are on the live feed might not have seen that we've got a whole party of children and young folk from the Royal School of Dunkeld who have just come in to join us for the next section. So we're going to pause the live feed for a bit for those who are joining us online. And this next section will be recorded, but will be shared later because it involves the children. We'll just check that everybody's cool with that. And well, thank you for your time, Martin, and again, Nathan, for sharing those insights. Hopefully that's inspired thoughts about how more climate cafes and businesses can work together. Thank you.
Thank you.